This is The High Road with author and registered psychotherapist, Dr. Marlene Bizub. Dr. Marlene speaks to the heart of people who need to be lifted up and get out of the muck and mire that often accompanies major life changes, such as divorce or separation. Dr. Marlene will aspire to help parents of divorce to love their children more than they hate their ex, and to learn to take the high road. So please welcome the host of The High Road, Dr. Marlene.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. This is Dr. Marlene, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. My guest co-host today is Sarah Sheppeck. And Sarah, you've been on the show before, but it was a long time ago, I think.
Yeah, it has been a great deal of time, so it's good to be back. Thank you so much for asking me to join you today.
Yes, thanks for being here. And I'm going to start off. I can let you introduce yourself, but the main thing, well, yeah, why don't I do that? Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
My name is Sarah Sheppeck. I've been working with Marlene in a few different capacities since I think about 2018 or 2019 now. It's been a while.
Yes.
But my day job is in marketing. I'm also a writer, and again, very pleased to be here today.
Well, thanks. And the relevance to this show about you is you're a child of divorce,
Absolutely
correct?
right. Yep,
Yes.
absolutely right.
So, yes. So the things we're going to talk about, a lot of them, hopefully not all of them, but a lot of them you have experienced yourself on a firsthand basis. So what we're talking about today are don'ts for parents going through separation or divorce. And I actually had written out a long list and then didn't bring it. And that's okay because they are so up here with me because of the work I do and have done. This year will be 31 years. Sarah, that's probably longer than you've been alive or close.
It's not, but
Okay. Okay,
it's
but
very
close.
impressive.
But I've done this for a long time. And so a lot of the things that parents do, it's just like I said up here, I don't have to have my list, but I was writing out some things. And the list is long of don'ts. And I'm going to start with, to me, the most obvious. And I taught class last night, co parenting class, for our courts here in Colorado Springs. And I always tell the parents in any of my classes, the greatest gift you can give your child is permission to love the other parent. And so the first thing that's to me most obvious is don't talk negatively about the other parent. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree. I was lucky. I think both of my parents were really making a concentrated effort to at least be cordial around each other when I was in the vicinity. So
Mhm.
neither of them really had much of a problem with talking about the other one. And if I ever said anything about one of them, the other one would report back. But yeah, I think that's majorly important advice to let your kid form their own opinions and have their own relationship with their parent.
Right, right.
Mhm.
And something I was telling the group last night is even if your child is speaking negatively about that other parent, they can do that. You can't. Like, they will not tolerate the other parent speaking negatively. And I've had kids, even though they're complaining, when that other parent jumps in and says, "Oh, yeah, I only know too well how your mom can be," or whatever, the kid will come back with something like, "Well, you're not the easiest to live with either, and things like that. They'll actually defend the parent that they are talking badly about because they have a right, they think, to speak, and I would agree, to speak negatively about that parent, but you, as their other parent, don't. And I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm guessing you'll agree.
I very much do. I very much do. You know, divorce can be really hard, and you talk about this all the time. Divorce can be really hard on your kids if you have them. I was really young when my parents broke up, so it
Hmm.
wasn't necessarily an impact that I voiced a lot about. But I think for you know, friends and family of mine who maybe their parents broke up when they were in their teens, their preteens, they had a lot of big feelings that they wanted to be able to express and share and have a safe space to do that without it becoming a toxic space from their parents to join in and share how much the process has been difficult. I think it's
Yeah.
really important for the parents to be parents and sort of
Yes.
keep the pain and grief that's related to the divorce within their circles and not bring that onto their kids.
Absolutely. And you said it. You said what I was thinking and was going to say next. And that is, you are the parent. Let
Mhm.
them vent. They're the child, but they aren't a caretaker for you. And so you shouldn't be venting to them, even if they're venting to you. You're the parent. And you said it very well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's so true. And parents just don't realize it. And they'll even say, well, my kid is saying this about his mom or dad
Mhm.
himself. And I'll say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't give you the right to say those things to
Right.
your child. Kids have an innate need to love both parents, and they might be upset with one parent or the other, especially going through divorce, because parents going through divorce can sometimes, often, behave badly. And so I get that the kids are upset with the parent in the moment or at the moment. But again, that doesn't mean that it gives you permission to just vent all your adult stuff. And that's the other thing is kids usually talk about kid stuff, but adults are often sharing adult things. Like, oh, she's cheated on me before. And that's not something your kid needs to hear.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think the way that adults who are experiencing the divorce or separation um, talk about that experience versus the way that children are talking about the experience is very different, and the children need to have the space to be able to talk about it.
Yes. Yes. Yep. And I have a story that I love to tell with my son when he was complaining about his dad one time. And I just played dumb. That's the best thing you can do is I said, "Oh, I didn't know he acts like that." And he was talking about his dad being kind of grouchy. And I have a good relationship with my ex, and so I don't want to ruin that. But I did know exactly what my son was talking about. His dad could. I don't think he's that bad anymore. But, back when we were young, in our 20s and 30s, he could be grouchy at times, as we all can. But when my son told me that and was complaining, I just played dumb. I said, "Really? I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry to hear he acts like that." And he goes, "Mom, you know he acts like that. That's probably why you got a divorce." And of course, I responded, "Well, you don't need to worry about why we got a divorce, but I'm sure sorry your dad's acting like that." And that's the best thing we can do. And I haven't done it all perfectly, don't get me wrong. But I think playing dumb when they talk about whatever they're feeling is the best thing we can do. Let it be theirs.
Yeah, I think that's really sound advice. That way you also get to let your child lead the conversation and vent
Yes.
as much as they feel is appropriate, say what they need to or want to say. And then you don't really have to say or do anything neutral or yeah, you remain completely neutral because you don't say anything at all.
Right, right. Well, and then kids also don't feel like my mom or dad is just trying to one up me. It kind of invalidates what they're saying and their experience when you say, "Oh, yeah, I know. Let me tell you about this time." And it's like, well, I don't care about that time. I care about what I'm experiencing right now. And so Yeah, I think we've beat that one to death. But to
Yeah,
me, like I said, that's the number one thing is let's don't speak negatively about the other parent. I have kids who are afraid to even say that they love the other parent because they know that parent doesn't like them very much right now. And so they're afraid to say anything positive about that parent. And it should never be that way.
I agree. That's really sad to hear. You should always, especially as a child, you're already a vulnerable population. So you shouldn't be
Yes.
afraid in your own home with your own parent to express honest things, especially love for the other parent.
Yes, yes, exactly. And I mentioned in there somewhere being a caretaker for your parent, and it should be the parents being a caretaker for the child, of course. But related to that, another don't, and I see this a lot, is parents who say to their kids when the kids don't want to be at their house that much or whatever, they'll say things like, that really hurts my feelings. And I will stop them right there and I'll say in front of the kid, well, they aren't responsible for your feelings. They aren't responsible for your happiness
Mhm,
because this almost becomes like a competition, a
mhm,
popularity contest between parents. And
mhm,
that should never be. But I have parents who say, one time it was the kid, we were on a call, a video call,
mhm.
and the kid didn't say, I love you before I um, ended the call. It wasn't even the kid's fault. And the
Sure.
next time we got on, the dad said, last time we were on, I said, I love you at the end, and you didn't even say it back. And that hurt my feelings. And I said, well, first of all, I ended the call too soon. I think he did say, I love you back. And the kid said, yeah, I did. And I said, but I had ended because I thought we were done. But
Mhm,
then I went on into my spiel about, furthermore, he's not responsible for your happiness and making you feel good. And so putting those kind of guilt trips on kids, I think is really highly inappropriate.
I agree. I think part of letting kids be kids is understanding that they are still learning how to do everything. You are born
Yeah.
and then you spend your life learning all of these skills, and those skills include communication and
Mhm.
emotional processing. And when your children are young and they're dealing with something like their parents being separated or divorced, they are still learning where to put all of
Mhm.
the feelings that they have about that subject matter,
Mhm.
um, and making them responsible in any way for your feelings as the adult is unfair, but it also really burdens your child with something that they genuinely don't have the capacity to handle.
That's right. That's right. And especially when they're younger. In fact, this is a good segue into something you mentioned earlier about some of your friends were teenagers or preteens when their parents went through their divorce. And I would agree with you that it's more difficult because they've had a longer period of their life being like the family was. Instead of 3 or 4 years, they've got 10 or 12 or 14 or whatever it may be. And so that's a lot more years of things being that way for them to have to get used to and adjust to the change. Well, same for things like taking care of your parents' feelings. Our younger kids don't know how to do that, nor, like you said, should they be burdened with having to do that?
I fully agree. Kids are, as we said, a vulnerable population already. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, part of protecting them and keeping them safe and making sure that their well-being is prioritized is making sure that they are not being burdened with more than they can handle, and that includes emotionally.
Yes. Yes. And then I'll move on to my third don't, and that is don't ask your kids about what's going on with the other parent in their household, in their life. in their relationships, that isn't your child's place to report back to you. And I have parents who routinely, I mean, they don't do it for very long because I stop them, but they will routinely ask the kids, well, what's your mom up to? Well, what's she doing right now? Well, who's she seeing right now? Well, did she ever get that stuff moved out of the back room? And, blah, blah, blah. If you want to know things about the other parent, by gosh, ask the other parent. Kids are not supposed to be reporters. They're not supposed to be spies. And I know you've seen it. I've seen it hundreds of times, but I think we all have, where parents are expecting kids to be spies. And then kids learn to just get in the car and say, you know what mom did? You know who she went out with the other night? You know how late she got home? I mean, that is not healthy.
It's not healthy at all, and it goes right back to what we were just saying in the last one about putting unfair burdens on children who are still learning things. Your kid doesn't know not to violate their other parent's privacy or
Mhm.
um, not to encourage your bad behavior by reporting these things back. All they're understanding is that they're probably receiving some kind of positive reinforcement from the parent who's asking them for the information. um, but yeah, it is really unhealthy.
Mhm.
And it's also not just unfair to the children, it's unfair to the parent or the parents who are being spied on. They have
Yes.
a reasonable right to um, you know, act a certain way in their own home and
Right.
have a certain degree of privacy in their own space and
Yes.
not expect that their child is going to be reporting back that information to an ex.
Yes, exactly. And what I tell parents is if your child starts telling you stuff, stop them, because I have parents who also blame the child. Well, he just started telling me about this. Well, stop him and remind him, hey, your mom and I, or your dad and I, live separate lives now. And what I tell kids is, and I have to explain what this word means, but I tell them, we don't keep secrets, but you don't need to indiscriminately go from household to household and just gossip. And then I'll ask, of course, if they know what indiscriminately means. And even my older kids usually don't, which I know that. And I take the opportunity to explain what that means and then teach them a life lesson, because this applies in all areas of life. You don't need to indiscriminately share things, whether it's about a coworker, a friend, your ex, your parent, whoever it may be. And so when these kids feel like, oh, I'm expected to come back and report, then they learn to be little gossips. To be
Mhm.
honest about it, they're gossips.
It's very true, and there is, as you said, you don't want your kids to keep secrets. You want them to feel like they can trust you, especially if there are issues that could potentially affect safety. But there's a difference between,
Mhm.
I might just casually mention that my mom has a new boyfriend or that my mom is seeing somebody, and then here's what he looks like, here's what I know about his job, here's what kind of car he drives, and
Right.
I'm going to pull out all of those details at the behest of the parent who's asking for the information, right? And it's a very
Yes.
different approach. So yeah, just let them share, let their kids share information naturally, I think, as they think
Yes.
it's to them.
Right. Absolutely. And the important thing you said there is, as it's important to them. It shouldn't be what you want to know about the other parent. It should be what the child wants to share. And so we'll talk more about this when we come back. So I've got a couple more things to say about this topic, because this is something I see a lot, as you would probably expect. But let's take a quick break. This is Dr. Marlene, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, we were talking about questioning kids, or even if you aren't questioning them, letting them gossip to you about the other parent. I believe it's a parent's responsibility to teach them, as I do, that the parents live separate lives now. You don't need to be gossiping about everything your mom or dad does. Because I guarantee parents, if the kids are gossiping about the other parent, they're gossiping about you when they go to the other parent's house. That's not going to be a one-way street. And a lot of parents are naive enough, or it feeds their ego enough, to believe that, well, my kid's going to share things with me, but he or she is not going to share things with the other parent. Well, I hate to tell you this, but the behavior you see is what the other parent sees as well. And so I will let you comment on that.
Yeah, I'm not a child, development educator or anything like that. So it's not a background that I have. But in my experience, kids only learn to develop any kind of dishonest behavior in response to being taught that and being reinforced in some way. It's usually
Yeah.
kids' inclination to be pretty straightforward and honest. Um, so I can absolutely see how if one parent is asking a child to essentially spy on another parent, it's going to be the kid's inclination probably not only to share that information, share the request with the other
Mhm.
parent, but also then to, as you said, sort of return the favor and do
Mhm.
the opposite behavior on the other side. Um, because the kid's going to be expecting reinforcement from both parents for this behavior that one parent has encouraged them to do.
Yes. Yes. And it's important for that other parent to redirect them also. Like, you might need not be the parent who prompted your child to do this, but sometimes we still, like you said, reinforce it because the kid is getting some kind of positive response to sharing that information. And so it's important, even if you aren't the one who prompted them to do this, that you stop them and say, you know what? You shouldn't be telling me about your dad, and you shouldn't be telling your dad about me. And just let them know it's inappropriate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I
and
agree.
another thing I get, and this just happened in a case, and I'll share it because to me this was pretty egregious. But the dad, and it's a 10-year-old boy, found out that mom not only has a boyfriend, which is fine, they've been divorced for years, but found out where he lives. And he is thinking that this boyfriend is going to watch his 10-year-old son when mom's at work. Well, the boy doesn't even know that dad knows mom has a boyfriend, let alone where he lives or that he might be potentially watching him when mom works. All of this is way speculative. I can't say that this morning, but it was pure speculation on dad's part that this is even going to happen. But he brings it up and says, well, who's going to watch you when mom moves? And he said, oh, probably still grandma who's watching him now. Oh,
Sure.
are you sure it isn't going to be Johnny? And the boy looks at him like, and he's confused because, first of all, he doesn't know dad knows about Johnny, but he's like, why would dad be asking me if Johnny's going to watch me? I mean, the kid hadn't even thought that far, because like I said, it was way premature. And so he's inviting trouble, inviting problems. And the kid, I mean, he kind of lost it, and he's asking me if we can step outside and talk. And again, this is not the way you treat your child. You don't question them or say things letting them know, dad's message was, I know mom has a boyfriend. And then he even said, are you surprised I know who Johnny is? And at that point, I stopped it. And I said, okay, we're not having this conversation with this child. But it's stuff like that. I mean, it can get pretty egregious. And being a child of divorce and with people who handled it well, I know how destructive that could have been if you would have been put in those positions.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so sad and scary to hear that. I know you deal with this all the time, but it's so sad and scary to hear that parents continue to do this to their kids. We said at the beginning of the show, you have to remember that you are the parent and they're the child. And that
Mhm,
includes a lot of responsibilities. But one of the responsibilities that it includes is not taking out your emotions on your kids, not.
mhm,
Um, being petty or sarcastic with your kids, and then not placing them in any kind of situation where they're going to be in the middle of these very adult issues and topics of conversation. So asking your kids about your ex's new partner or what that new partner does or anything like that is just very inappropriate on a lot of
mhm,
levels, and it's really, really uncomfortable. Like you said, that poor little boy needed to like go out and step out and speak with you. It really puts a lot of undue stress and strain and anxiety on kids who, as I said earlier, are still learning how to process those emotions in the first place. Um,
mhm.
it's a lot. It's a lot for them to deal with, and it's not a fair thing to put on them.
Yes, yes, I would totally agree. I mean, yeah, it's way too much to put on kids, especially 10 and younger than that. I mean, I have kids who the parent will ask them something or say something to them, and they're, 5, 6, 7, and they look at me like, what's my parent talking about? And, parents, I think, sometimes forget our kids are kids. They don't have adult thinking, their brains aren't developed yet. And they don't know what you're talking about half the time. And it just becomes really detrimental to their well being to feel like instead of just relaxing and enjoying my time with my mom or my dad, I got to be on edge. I got to worry about what they're going to say. And the little boy did when he asked me if we could step out and talk. He said, how did he find out about Johnny? And I said, I don't know. And he goes,
Mhm.
what if mom thinks I told him? And I said,
No.
well, honey, I was in the room. I know that you didn't tell him. I know, but what if she thinks I did? And that's the harm right there. And so
Yeah.
I contacted mom and said, hey, this came up, but he had nothing to do with it. Dad brought it up. Dad knew about him. Of course, it kind of freaked her out too, because she's like, how did he know about him? I've only been out with him 3 times or whatever, you know. But yeah, the other parent's personal life is no longer your business,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I think that's a tough pill for some people to swallow. And I get it to some degree, right? If you're, especially if you're married to somebody, it's the most serious jump that your relationship can take, at least, on paper. And you feel really bonded to that person. Your lives were intertwined. But if you've decided to separate, and certainly if
Hmm.
you've decided to divorce, then you have to let go of everything that comes with that, and that
Hmm.
includes being privy to what this autonomous adult is doing with their lives. So yeah, it
Right.
is it is scary to think of being that the ex-wife who's learning that her ex-husband knows about the guy she's been on 3 dates with. That's not okay. She should be able to go on a few dates with somebody without fear that somebody is keeping tabs, and certainly that somebody is her ex-husband and partially trying to use their son to do it.
Yes, yes. Well, and that's a great segue too into asking kids, or maybe not asking kids. The kid might innocently tell you, but commenting on the parenting of the other parent. So I have parents who reach out to me, reach out to the other parent, and they start questioning how the parent is parenting. And I tell them, short of an issue of endangerment, and that's a high standard to, it's a high threshold to meet in the courts, what the court will consider endangerment. But unless it is true endangerment, not just bad parenting, because sometimes it's, bad parenting, but it's like, it's not great parenting. It might even be really bad parenting, but it's not endangerment. And so you don't have any say so about it. I have parents who have a really hard time understanding that they don't have any say so about how the other parent parents.
Mhm,
I don't
mhm.
know if you've experienced that at all, but they want to
Yeah.
comment on your bedtime and what the other parent is feeding the child and the punishment that they gave them or didn't give them. And this goes back to what you just said about you live separate lives now. So
Mhm.
not only is that other parent's personal life no longer your business, but how you raise your child now is no longer, or how they raise their child is no longer your business.
Yeah, I think this is a common one. And I
Mm-hmm.
think,
Mm-hmm.
in a perfect world, right, all parents just want to love and protect their children. But I think
Yes.
even in the best case scenario, there's still this inclination to want to know what the other parent is doing and if they're
Mm-hmm.
doing things differently, because you really want to make sure that you think you know best for your own child. So I
Right.
think it's pretty common to find out that the parents divorce or separate, and then there are different bedtimes, or you're allowed to watch TV shows at one house that you can't watch at the other house, or play video
Mm-hmm.
games at the house that you can't play at the other house. And it was something that came up a little bit with my parents, that they wanted to know, like, oh, your mom lets you watch that, your dad, blah, blah, blah. It would come up a little bit, but like I said, my parents really made an effort to kind of stay out of each other's business unless it was directly related to me. And I'm appreciative of their decision to
Mm-hmm.
do that, because I've definitely seen with, my friends and family's parents, that what it looks like when they are in each other's business, judging the other person's parenting ability, even if
Mm-hmm.
the parenting style isn't harmful, it's just different.
Right.
Mhm,
Right. And
mhm,
each parent is allowed to do that. And I hate to tell parents this, but you were doing it in your household even when you were together. You maybe didn't agree, but you were exercising different parenting styles even when you were together. And
Yeah.
what a kid could get away with one parent might be very different than what they got away with the other parent. But you usually didn't comment on it, at least not to the child. And then once parents separate, some parents just have this need to comment on, or like you said, judge what the other parent is doing, how they are parenting. And then you get the kid that goes back and says, "You're a bad parent." And the parent will say, "Why do you say that?" "Well, my dad said you're a bad parent, or you
Yeah.
shouldn't do this or that." And we just can't have kids in the middle of their own punishments or their own rules and guidelines in the other parent's house. That's up to each parent.
It is. And that last thing that you said about the kids start to parent or the kids start to parrot back the judgment that they're
Hmm.
hearing.
Yes.
Everything that we've said kind of boils down to remember that your kids are still kids and let them, to the best of your ability and to their ability, be kids, learn new things, process the information as they can in a safe environment to do that. And that's why you don't talk about your former partner or whomever in their presence, because they will just parrot that information back, and now you've made the situation a lot more messy and hurtful for everyone involved, not
Hmm.
just yourself.
Right. And it's also, there's a term for this, and it's called parentified behavior from the child when they start like commenting on, like they're judging you and um, putting a value on or opinion on what you do or don't do. Now they are parentified. And like
Okay.
you said, they need to be kids. They're kids. Let them be kids. But you have parents who they just have to make that comment. I don't know if they think they're looking better in their kids' eyes because they're the superior parent, because they're putting down the way the other parent parents. I don't know what the driving force is there, but as you said, it's not healthy for the kids. It's not allowing them to be kids.
And just as we were saying earlier, parents, when when we're not talking about issues of safety and whatever else, parents have a reasonable right to privacy inside their own home. So if you are parenting your kid, I'm going to say normally, when broadly in this
Uh,
sentence, then you have the ability to do that without it being reported back, about it being, judged by somebody who's no longer in your life.
right, right. And related to this point, but a little different, but I feel inclined to throw it in right now. There is one time that I don't let kids call the other parent, and that's when they're in trouble with the parent they're with. If you're in trouble with mom, you don't get to call dad, because all
Mhm.
you're going to do is try to get sympathy and tell dad how awful mom is, or vice versa. And we're not going to do this because parents don't always hear the story accurately. And so then they start placing judgment on the parent, like, well, that's not appropriate for your mom to do. Well, first of all, that may not be what mom did. What they're telling you may not be accurate. The second of all, even if it is, again, you have no say so over that. And so I just don't let kids call the other parent at all, because when they're in trouble with the parent they're with, because no good is going to come out of that. It's just not.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that kids learn early on. It's a sitcom trope, right? To play one parent
Yes.
against the other. So yeah,
Yes.
if you are trying to discipline your child, you need to be able to discipline your child without interference from other people in that scenario, and that might include the other parent, the ex spouse or ex partner.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. And like we've been talking about, you just don't have say so about that. And so no use even talking about it.
Yeah,
Not a discussion you need to have with your kid,
no,
for
not
sure.
at all, not at
All
all. And I
right.
think
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that's what a lot of this boils down to, is knowing when these are not appropriate discussions to be having with your children.
Right, right. Okay, time to take another quick break, but I've got a really important final don't when we come back. This is Dr. Marlene, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. Yeah, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. I should have said after we came back from our last break that Sarah Sheppeck is our guest co-host today. Sorry about that, Sarah, that
That's
I
all
didn't
right.
introduce you again. But I love doing the show with you. We're going to have you on more often.
I would
But
love to. I'm having a great time talking to you.
good, good. Well, you've lived this, and there's no experience like having lived it, you know.
Mhm.
And so people can talk about it, and theoretically, they can think they know what they know, but until you've actually lived it, you don't know what it's like. And I'll tell you, my final, and maybe not final, but the last don't that we're probably going to have time to talk about today is a big one. And this is don't assume that 50-50 parenting time is best for your children. It might be best for you. It might be fair because parents talk about what's fair. But the people it's fair to are the parents. And that's great if we're trying to take care of the parents, but we need to be trying to take care of the kids. And it isn't fair to kids if it doesn't work for them. And what I'm getting at is sometimes parents don't live in close proximity to each other, or they don't live in close proximity to places like the school
Mhm.
or other places where the kids go. And so to assume that 50-50 is always going to be best or what the kids need is not accurate at all. And I have other things to say about that, but I'll stop there and let you tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, so this one is interesting because my parents never did a 50-50 split when I was growing up. My dad actually had primary custody most of the time. I was with him Monday through Friday. My mom had me on weekends. And then my mom was a teacher when I was growing up, so she had summers off and she would take me during the summers while my dad was still working. And that was
See,
Yeah, and that was the schedule for my entire life from age 2 or 3 until I was, 17, getting ready to graduate high school and go to college. And it was just what worked for our family.
Yes. And the reason I said C is one of the primary factors I look at is what is each parent's available time to be with the kids. And I have these parents who ask for 50-50, but they work until 9 o'clock in the evening. And so somebody else is putting the kid to bed, or they just aren't available. Like maybe they work from home, but they work evening hours. And so the kid has no one to help them get dinner or do their homework or put them to bed, things like that. And they're really kind of fending for themselves. Or parents leave them with someone else because they're working, and not with them. And if that's the case, your kid is better off with the other parent than with a babysitter or whoever it may be at your house. And so I don't get it. And then another factor. So, first of all, there is the parents' availability. And your parents addressed that beautifully. I mean, they handled that exactly the way they should have. And that is when mom's available, mom's got you more. When
Mhm,
she's not, dad's got you more.
mhm.
That's perfect. But the other thing is children's temperament, their age, their resiliency. Sometimes they go back and forth well, sometimes they don't. I have kids who they wake up and they don't know where they are. It's kind of like when we as adults wake up in a hotel
Yeah.
and for a minute we're disoriented. We're like, where am I? Oh, yeah, I'm at the hotel. Kids sometimes do that on an ongoing basis. It's not just for that night. It's ongoing. They wake up and they don't know where they are. And
Mhm.
sometimes it will even occur in both homes, but usually it happens more in one that, okay, they wake up and I'm home, but then the other one, they wake up, where am I? And so if your children aren't adjusting well, they aren't sleeping, or they just aren't adjusting well, then stop trying to do a 50-50.
Yeah, I agree. And that's you brought up another big thing, which is whether or not the kid travels well, and then whether they're comfortable at the other space. So, one of the
Yes.
factors that often accompanies divorce is that one of the parents is moving into a new space, right? They were in a shared
Right.
home, and then their parents moving into a new apartment. And
Hmm.
sometimes the kid is having a hard time adjusting to that new space or having a new
Hmm.
bed. And those are all natural things that
Hmm.
the kid can be wary of, and it's better not to push the visits at those times until the kid starts to get more comfortable and then can start verbalizing that he or she wants to spend more time there.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You'll know when they're ready. They'll show signs of it or tell you that they're ready to have more time there. But some kids, I mean, I had a boy yesterday, he's 15 or about to be 15, and he just doesn't sleep well at dad's. And he
Yeah.
said, why do I have to be there overnight? Why can't I go back to mom's just to go to bed? And I get it. And I'll tell you, and I shared this with him. I'm not sure I necessarily should have, but at his age, I felt it was appropriate. The reason most parents care about that, at least in Colorado, and many states are this way, is child support is based in part on the number of overnights that each parent has. And so
Sure.
parents want more overnights because it affects child support, either how much you're going to pay or how much you're going to receive. And
Sure.
that is not a reason to put your kids through something that does not work for them
Mhm.
because you don't want to pay as much child support or you want to get more child support.
Oh, I fully agree. And, having a family is very expensive anyway. So while I
Mhm,
understand that, you when you had your children, you may not have planned to not stay with your now ex.
mhm.
You may not have planned on that breakup, but child support and quibbling over it is always at the bottom rung for me of acceptable reasons to start issues with your former partner or with your child, and just prioritize what the child's needs are at this time.
Right. Right. In fact, when I did evaluations for the court, I choose not to do them anymore. I fill a lot of other roles in the courts, but do not choose to be an evaluator. But when I did that for 18 years, I would ask parents first what they thought they wanted in the way of parenting time. Then we would talk about the fact that it affects child support. And it's funny how they would change. Like they'd say, well, I'm more available on the weekend. So if I could just have like every other weekend and maybe a dinner visit during the week, it'd be fine because
Mhm.
that's what they reasonably could exercise. But then when they find out that it affects child support, it's like, oh no, I've decided I want 50-50. Our child should have access to both of us on an equal basis. And I'm like, well, should they really? You seem to think before that what was most appropriate was every other weekend and a dinner visit. And I also challenge those who say that you can't go back to the other parent's house at night. I mean, just to go to sleep, like the kid yesterday who said,
Mhm.
I just want to go back at bedtime. I'll stay until 9 o'clock. I don't go to
Yeah.
bed till 9. I'll stay till 9, but let me just go back to go to sleep. To me, those things are legit.
I think so too. And I think it's important to um, let your children practice advocating for what makes them comfortable. This is a
Yeah.
transition for them too.
Hmm.
And certainly, if they're making requests that can be reasonable, like, can I stay until bedtime? Try to do your best to not just shut it down, and listen to them and their reasons for it, and let them make those requests.
Right. That's right. And it really should be about them. And, I think parents start off with good intentions. Like they want to make it about the child and they try to make it about the child, but then other things surface along the way, like child support and things like that, or just what other people say or think. And those things should not cloud your judgment about what's best for your child. If you know what's best, stay with what's best.
I completely agree. It's something that might be subject to change, over time.
Right.
What works best for you this month might not work best for you in 6 months or a year, and that's okay.
That's right, because we can always change it. Yes. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your insight and thoughts.
Thank you so much for having me today. It was a pleasure to join you.
Well, we'll have you back for sure.
That sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. This is Dr. Marlene, and you've been watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll see you next week.
Tune in to The High Road with host Dr. Marlene and gain insight into how to rise above tough circumstances and learn the skills that will help you take the high road in your life, no matter what challenges might come your way, on the next episode of The High Road.